I would like to bring you more history this week, but the crystal ball's a little bit foggy. I can't seem to see too far into the past this week. It's not really that unusual when you talk about a lot of traditional games. Just nobody saw a reason to write them down 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Hey, welcome back to my game room. You know, there's a lot of little games that are traditional around the world, but there's one culture that really has a huge collection of little games like this. That's the Korean culture. They call them the Gonu games, or maybe that's redundant, Gonu meaning small game. It seems like every culture on the planet has got some kind of small game like this, a 9-hole game or a pattern forming game. 3 in a row is very popular. Entrapment games, simply to trap your opponent so they can't move. And they seem to have a trove of these games in Korea that they call the Gonu. Sometimes they're called Kono or Gono. I tend to pronounce it however I happen to see it the first time. In this case, it's Pat Gonu. And every time I say that, my business partner says, "Hey, I think I went to high school with that guy." Thanks, Scott. Pat Gonu is one of the more popular ones, actually, and it has several other names, regional names. Translated in English, it's sometimes called pig Gonu or pork Gonu or swine Gonu. I'm not quite sure how that came about. But another very popular name that you'll see is Hobag Gono or Hobak Gono, and that translates in English to pumpkin Gono. And I guess you can say, looking at the board, that it has a circle in the middle. It must have reminded somebody of pumpkins, and so it's called pumpkin Gono at times. And it has that kind of in common with Shiguachi, which is the Chinese game called watermelon chess, which is not about watermelons or chess, but it has a circular board. So I guess that's where the watermelon idea came from. The two games are quite similar, as a matter of fact. They are both entrapment games, and so there's some cross-cultural thing going on there, sharing different game ideas. I did track down a little bit about the history of these Gonu. There are some artifacts, ceramic Gonu boards that were found in the south coast of North Korea that date back to the 10th century. And there are also some artifacts that go back to the 14th century that have been found in the Soswewan Gardens in Damyang, which is in South Korea. So these little games have quite a history there on the peninsula. We can say with some confidence that the name Hobag Gonu, Hobag being the Korean for pumpkin, and pumpkin was not introduced to the Korean society until the mid-1700s. So there's that. But anyway, let's look real quick at the way to play the game, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the Gonu family of games. Each player has 3 pieces, and the game begins with those 3 lined up as shown on either side of a circular center of the board. The objective is to trap your opponent so they cannot move. The last player to move will be the winner. Moves are 1 space at a time, following the lines on the board. That's the simplest rule set. But there are other sources that add a couple of restrictions. One of them is, once you leave the home row, you cannot return to it. There's no escape from the arena at the center. Personally, I think this is a good way to play the game. Some rules state that a player may not move into the opponent's starting row of 3 spaces. That makes sense, because why would you go there? Doing that has little strategic value and just makes the game longer. Another source I found says that pieces cannot move backward. Well, that's really restrictive, and I think it takes away some of the fun of the game. That's it. That's a long one, isn't it? But I also want to let you know right now that we are going to be adding Pat Gonu to our product line at NewVenture as part of our Peg Pastime series of historic games from around the world. This will probably be coming to you as part of a Kickstarter campaign in the first quarter of 2024. So watch for that, and we'll definitely let you know about that on our Facebook page as well as here on YouTube. Meanwhile, whether you play a Gonu or a Kono or a Gono or whatever pronunciation you favor, I encourage you to be sure and remember to play every day.